Immortal Works Flash Fiction Friday Christmas Special. Santa's a Badass by Jason King. Read for you by John Grundvig. I was 6 the Christmas I saw Santa Claus. Not a minimum wage department store imposter, but the real deal. And let me tell you, he's not what the cartoons and claymations make him out to be. Santa isn't a jolly old elf. No, Santa's a badass. I wish I could say Christmas was usually a happy time in my house, but happy times were the anomaly year-round. Something that not even the worldwide season of peace could change. A single-income household, 7 kids, too much department store debt, and Dad's affinity for Jim Beam made our family dynamic, rocky. To make matters worse, Dad had lost his job at the factory last summer and had told us in no uncertain terms that we didn't have enough money for Christmas presents. I would have bought that if the empty bottles of bourbon didn't keep showing up in the trash and backyard. So, my only hope that year for presents rested on my belief that Santa would come. Noise from above made me sit up. Could that be reindeer on the roof? I had been hoping and praying that, despite what my older sister Janelle had told me, that Santa was real, and that he would come. I'd kept the faith in every way I knew how. I'd been extra nice, left out a glass of reconstituted milk along with a paper plate holding a cookie I'd saved from school. And I had set up our tree. That's what I needed to do to invoke a visit from the Claus, at least in my little boy mind. I jumped out of bed and ran into the hall. Another thump above me stoked the fire of my faith. But instead of the sound that was supposed to come next, that of jingling reindeer bells, I heard a slow creaking from behind me. Just above the stairs, a ladder slowly descended from a square opening in the ceiling. That confused me. We had a chimney, so why would Santa need to come in through the attic? I walked toward the ladder until I was directly underneath the ceiling hatch. Santa? 2 red dots flashed in the darkness. Whoosh! Something flew down from the attic with enough force that it knocked me on my butt. It was a translucent shadow in the vague shape of a person, the 2 red dots I had seen having been its eyes. It cycloned into the hall before changing directions and flying down the stairs. I couldn't help but follow. Not out of bravery, I'm ashamed to admit, but to make sure it had really gone. Standing at the top of the stairs, I could see my old man passed out on the couch, an empty bottle lying on the carpet reflecting the reds, blues, and golds of our one string of Christmas tree lights. I froze. The translucent shadow hovered above my father, watching him sleep. I gasped when it suddenly looked up and met my eyes. A hideous ethereal grin parted the blackness of its face, and then it dove at my dad, disappearing inside of him. I tried to call out for Mom, but she'd be in a diazepamic coma by now. Probably wouldn't wake even if the house was on fire. I cautiously descended the stairs. Daddy? He abruptly sat up, the motion so sudden that it made me jump. He stood, movements maladroit and unnatural. He looked around the room like he didn't know where he was. That wasn't uncommon for him from waking from a drunken stupor. But the hellish grin and glowing red eyes weren't likely the product of the empty bottle at his feet. He took a step toward me. Come here, Jack. The voice was my father's, but also wasn't. It was like someone was doing an impression of him, a bad one. I bolted, turning down the hall and running into the kitchen where I slipped into the cupboard beneath our kitchen sink. I clamped a hand over my mouth to muffle my shuddering breaths and had to bite back a scream when I heard Dad's footsteps. Jackie, he called in a sickly sweet voice. Where are you, Jackie? Come out. Daddy's not going to hurt ya. The sound of a knife being drawn from the wooden kitchen block belied his reassuring tone. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I silently cried. Through the seam between the cupboard doors, I saw Dad walk past my hiding spot. It went quiet long enough that I was about to take a peek to see if he'd gone. Gotcha! My dad threw open the cupboard doors and seized the front of my shirt with his free hand. He pulled me out from under the sink and tossed me on a cracked linoleum floor. I scrambled backward, stopping abruptly when my back struck the fridge. A wall and table stood to my left, blocking my only possible way out of the kitchen. Dad flashed a grin too wide for a human face while brandishing his weapon. "Don't be afraid, Jackie. Daddy's got a present for you." He made a mock stabbing motion with a large knife. "Daddy has a present for the whole family." He stepped closer, chuckling at his own stupid joke as he grabbed a fistful of my hair. "Merry Christmas, Jackie." I squeezed my eyes shut so hard they burned. Jingling. My eyes snapped open just in time to catch the outline of a large man standing in front of our back door, though we clearly hadn't come in that way as the door remained closed and locked. The embers of a cigar lit up a dirty beard and bushy eyebrows. A loud boom shook the kitchen, and Dad let go of me and whirled toward the man. He stepped into light pouring in from an adjoining room, and that's when I saw him. I mean, really saw him. His face was leathery and grizzled, and he wore a patch over his left eye. He had on the typical red cap with white trim, but it was dirty with sweat and grime. He wore a red overcoat that was more duster than anything, and although he did have a belly, his arms and chest were muscled. And most surprising of all, he trained a pump-action pistol-grip shotgun on my dad, a wisp of smoke rising from the muzzle. "Santa?" "St. Nicholas!" Dad growled in a voice that was no longer familiar or human. "Ho, ho, ho, bitch!" Santa pumped the shotgun, aimed and fired. Boom! Dad slammed against the wall, a gaping hole in his chest. Blood smeared the wall as he slid to the floor. "Come here, Jack!" Santa waved me over with a hand gloved in red leather. I scrambled toward him and hugged his tree-trunk-sized leg. "Santa!" I sobbed. The sound of bones snapping drew my attention back to my father. His limbs were contorting and his skin peeling in a disgusting metamorphic display ending in an explosion of blood and gore. "You think more the weapons are of any use against me, St. Nicholas?" The demon laughed. And demon it was, now and truly, for it had torn from my dad's skin like a butterfly from a chrysalis, wet red skin with black veins woven throughout. It flexed clawed hands and extended two leathery red wings. "Get behind me!" Santa ordered, and I wholeheartedly complied. "That is my dinner!" The demon threw its arms to the side and upended the kitchen table with the flick of its wrist. Santa dropped the shotgun and drew a long glass sword from over his back. It lit up from the inside, glowing a soft golden white. The demon shied back, claw covering its face as it hissed. "You know what this is, demon." "The sword from the lady in the lake," Dad shrieked. "Damn Skippy! And I'm going to use it to send your sorry ass back to hell!" Santa sure did cuss a lot. Cool. The demon bellowed as it lunged forward. Santa shoved me to the side so hard that when I hit the kitchen wall, it drove the breath from my lungs. The demon swiped at Santa with dagger-like black claws, but Santa ducked and dodged. For a big guy, he was very agile. The demon reared and flung its face forward, maw opening so wide that he could bite Santa's head off with one snap of its unhinged jaw. Santa put a finger to the side of his nose and disappeared in an explosion of tiny gold stars. Then he reappeared behind the demon with his crystal sword held over his head. He brought it down just as the demon started to turn, slicing through the monster from crown to crotch. The demon halves fell to either side of Santa, who is now covered in its blackish blood. The pieces of the demon that littered the floor burst into flames, then burned for a moment before extinguishing to leave behind black ash. Santa sighed. "That's the fifth Rokurokubi tonight!" The crystal sword he held flashed, and then winked out, no blood or demon viscera spotting its glass-like blade. Santa sheathed it back over his shoulder and then looked down at me. "Sorry I had to kill your pa, Jack, but he was on my naughty list." The towering figure knelt and wiped blood off my face with the handkerchief. "Sides, I've seen the way he's been treating your ma and sisters. His abuse is what summoned that demon. I just nodded, tears rolling down my cheeks, making runnels and the blood splatter. Don't worry, though. Your mom's gonna meet a real nice police officer. Or at least he'll be dressed like one when she first sees him. Santa coughed and then trailed off. Then a smile spread across his face. You've been a good boy, Jack, so I have a present for you. He reached into the folds of his duster-like fur-lined overcoat and handed me a golden crucifix. I examined it. With this, Jack, you can be one of Santa's helpers. He reached out and touched a jewel on the crucifix, and a silver dagger sprang out. I looked up into Santa's one good eye. What's it for? Ho, ho, ho! Santa stood. For killing vampires, of course. He pulled a smartphone from his pocket and scowled. I have to be going, Jack. Seems there's a chupacabra terrorizing an orphanage outside Guadalajara. He turned to leave. Wait, I said, and ran into the front room and returned with the paper plate on which was the single tree-shaped sugar cookie I brought home from school. This is for you. Santa smiled. I think I saw a tear run out of his one good eye. He took the cookie and hugged me. I proffered Santa the cup of milk made from powder. He let go of me, popped the cookie in his mouth, and walked over to the cupboard above the sink. That's okay, Jack. Santa threw open the cover and grabbed one of Dad's bottles of Jim Beam. This is my milk. Ho, ho, ho! He laughed and then put a finger to the side of his nose and disappeared in an explosion of tiny white stars. Santa is real, and he's a badass. Thanks for listening to Immortal Works Flash Fiction Friday. If you have a story you want to submit, send your entry to contact@immortal-works.com.